My name is Matt Gallagher and I'm the Liberal Democrat candidate for Police and Crime Commissioner for Greater Manchester.
Okay, Matt, who are you and what are you going to bring to this role?
Well, I'm the only one of the candidates that's actually been a police officer and has police experience, so I bring that experience to the role. I've also published a manifesto which sets out clearly what I intend to do and, more importantly, how I intend to do it. And I think that's important if you're asking the public to vote for you, to actually explain how you're going to get to where you want to be. I've outlined my strategy for increasing the number of officers on the beat, for example. And there are a number of things which, because I've got police experience, I know can be done better and can be improved. For instance, I've proposed a police apprenticeship scheme. None of the other candidates have done that.
And what would that entail?
Well, at the moment, if you join the police, it's 43 weeks before you can actually go out on the beat on your own because of training implications and abstractions. And my argument is that much of that training could be done before you actually sign up and join as a police officer, in which case you would then be in a position to go on the beat a lot earlier. Now, that's almost a year, isn't it, 43 weeks? 50 officers, new recruits, are spending almost a year in training before they can actually go out on the beat. That's the equivalent of almost 50 years of police work that's lost, and that could be done in an apprenticeship scheme before they actually join. It also means that the police service has a better choice of candidate when they're selecting people to join the service. One of the problems that they've had in recent years is that people sign on, they have to do a probation for 2 years, and a lot of people fall by the wayside, and that's all money lost. It costs thousands of pounds to train a police officer, give them equipment and uniform, and if they don't make it through, that's dead money, it's gone. So there's a saving to be made there by not investing in training people who are police officers, but investing in apprentices and then selecting from there. It's also a good opportunity for people from underrepresented areas to join the service in a safe environment and see if it's the job for them.
Okay, the role of Police and Crime Commissioner is controversial to say the least. I mean, some would say it's just another £100,000 a year job we just don't need. So what is the role actually going to bring over the police authority, which is doing pretty much the same job anyway?
Well, the authority was never elected. The authority was made up of 19 people, all of whom received several £1,000s in an allowance. And they had no mandate from the people. And we've seen in recent years, just recent examples of spending £100,000 of your money and my money for artwork to hang in a police station foyer. We've seen thousands of pounds spent on pot plants. £5,000 allocated to the Lowry Hotel, a 5-star hotel in Manchester, for an ease-up, which then had to be cancelled. And the hotel said, well, you're not getting the money back. So if the public felt that that was a misuse of the public's money, they had no say. There's no comeback. You can't do anything about it. You can't complain about these people because they're not elected, they're appointed. And what's happening is that that's going, and the public can now elect a person to replace them, and if they are not delivering, or the people are not happy with the way in which the service has been delivered, or they think there's too much waste, or the police are not doing the job that they've been asked to do, they can get rid of that person at the next election.
Do you feel that's a more democratic system than we've got at the moment? I mean, you yourself, you are, as we say, a political animal, you're representing a political party. Do you feel that's a more democratic system than we've got at the moment?
I would have liked more independence to stand, but the way in which the selection was set up and the government's insistence that people had to put down a £5,000 deposit meant that I couldn't stand as an independent. And the Manchester Liberal Democrats didn't want to put up a politician for this because they have ideological objections to a politician being in charge of Greater Manchester Police. But I was approached by my local Liberal Democrat MP, John Leach, who knew I was a police officer and knew that I was interested in the Liberal Democrats and working on the periphery with the Liberal Democrats. And he said, well, you're always going on about the police and complaining about things. Why don't you stand? And I said, I can't afford it. But he said, well, we will find the deposit. There's no more money, we can't afford leaflets or anything, but they've put up the deposit and that's allowed me to stand. They've also said, you write your own manifesto. There is no Lib Dem involvement in the writing of my manifesto for Greater Manchester.
How prepared do you feel for the role we've been speaking to other people in the same position and also the Salford City Mayor, which is a similar kind of idea, the Americanisation idea. So how prepared do you actually feel?
Well, I have run a large police department, but this is not about being an experienced bean counter or being an executive of a major company. That's to misrepresent what the role is about. The role, as I see it, is about listening to people and about getting people from the various communities and from various groups who may feel that they're underrepresented, to get them together and to thrash out what is the best solutions to dealing with crime and the fear of crime across Greater Manchester. So it isn't a case of somebody who's experienced at doing the books or managing an office. That's not what the role is about, in my view.
You'll know, of course, that some of the communities at highest risk of crime, especially in Salford, are the ones least likely to vote. So how do you plan to manage that and listen to the people at the highest risk of crime?
Well, I've said that I would have a consultative committee of people who are made up from the various communities across Greater Manchester, and we will be reaching out to those communities, and I intend to go out into the communities as often as possible. I always said that the streets are my office, and that's where I feel best, and that's where I find out what's going on by talking to ordinary people. That's what I did as a police officer. I walk to beat, I speak to shopkeepers, speak to people in the street, speak to people who are working locally, and that's where you get your information from. And I'm confident that if I was the commissioner, that would be the same policy that I would follow. Getting out into the community. I have no problem with walking around the middle of Salford on a Saturday night at 1:30 in the morning, speaking to people who are working on the doors or working in the kebab shops or driving the taxis, because that's where you find out where the real issues are and what the real problems are. And then you feed that back into your policy and how you're going to deal with it.
And the people watching this, the electorate of Salford, are going to want to know what you know about Salford, the city and its problems.
Well, I was a police officer for 30 years. I was in the tactical aid unit for 6 years, carried out a number of operations in Salford. Salford does have problem areas, and there are some lovely areas of Salford that are a million miles away from the areas where there are problems. My grandson and his mum live in Gorton, and his mum works in Hope Hospital. I'm in Salford every week, and so I'm fairly familiar with the problems of Salford and the issues that affect the people of Salford.
Do you know where the highest crime areas of Salford are?
Yes, but I'm not going to name them because I don't think that's fair. I don't think it's right to stigmatise areas, because I found...
But you do know?
I do know, but I found very early on, I was sent as a young PC to work in Bench Hill in Wythenshawe, and the Evening News had a headline saying, "Burglary Capital of Europe." And I know how upsetting that was to local people, because the vast majority of people in Wythenshawe are decent, hard-working, law-abiding people. And that's exactly the same in Salford. There are areas where there are problems of deprivation, there are problems of unemployment, but you'll still find the vast majority of people in those areas want to live a decent, safe life, and they want to make sure that they can thrive as families and in a thriving community.
But